Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're at on the globe. My name is Jeremy, and welcome back to another live stream here on the Sergeant Tank YouTube channel. Today, I'm going to be going over some very important tips regarding. I got quite a bit of information here to provide to you guys. So if you're watching this in the replay, there will also be some notes down in the description, any links and that sort of stuff as well. When it comes to preparing for an aquarium club auction specifically. Give you a little bit of background. Held multiple positions through our local aquarium club, which is Grand Valley Aquarium Club here in the Grand Rapids, Michigan market, as well as ran and facilitated multiple very large size auctions. So I'm going to give you kind of some behind the scenes and things that may be looked, even if you have been part of an aquarium club related event, auction, that sort of thing, and hopefully better prepare you guys if you're going to an event. And the same exact thing goes if you're going to a convention type style auction. Also facilitated those as well. So with that being said, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get to it. As it shows here in the pinned comment, just so you guys are aware, when I have a topic based here on the YouTube channel, during a live, I prefer to just stay focused on the topic, the information I want to provide here today. And then at the conclusion of this topic, I'll go ahead and let you guys know that you can feel free to go ahead and ask your questions, super chats, super stickers, whatever the case might be. So not ignoring you. I just have a bunch of information to get through. And like I said, feel free to go ahead. If you enjoyed this sort of content, of course, it helps us here on the platform. Give it a like, make sure you subscribe, put on those post notifications so you get all future updates. Same thing goes for our community tab or the community post here on YouTube. So the first thing that you need to think about, of course, is knowing what club events are coming up. That just comes to familiarity, talking with your local fish clubs, talking to other fish keepers in your market. Obviously, if you're part of a club, you'll typically get that information regarding your own club events. If you're have other club events and auctions and that sort of stuff, especially this time of the year, you're going to start seeing more and more of those as things start to become more in person. I'm not going to, I just want to mention here, I'm not going to talk too much about proxy bidding because it really doesn't apply to most. So we're just going to be really focused on actually going to an in-person event, obtaining what you need to, getting prepared for that, and that sort of thing. So obviously, first thing is knowing the club, knowing what's out there in your market. In first and foremost, once you've narrowed that down, I would imagine most clubs this day and age, and if they're not, then they need to really get on their game, but should have basic minimum through WordPress or something like that, some sort of URL website link that you can go to with forms, documents, anything that you need to get yourself familiar with the rules, because most of the information I'm going to be sharing with you, again, from being a part in facilitating and also working with other related club events and that sort of stuff, most of these rules are going to be pretty similar and universal across the board. But with that in mind, you do need to get familiar with that specific club rules when it comes to things that we'll be mentioning here today, as far as if you plan on selling, what the rules are there, how many items you can actually bring, and that sort of stuff. So I'm probably not going to get too specific on, really narrowing it down, but to give you a broad, so it would take me about 6 hours to go through if I was going to go through every little fine detail. What I want to point out is obviously the do's and don'ts as well, which I'll also get to. So if you plan on obviously selling at an auction, first thing obviously that you're going to need is a seller ID. Typically your initials or essentially three letters. So let's say PLN, that sort of thing. And you'll want to reach out ahead of time. And the other thing to think about is if you plan on selling and I'll talk about that here in a little bit, but I want to make note of this right now, is from the standpoint if you're actually a paid member with that specific club. If you're not, I can tell you most Most big auctions, I'm not talking the mini auctions at the end of each club's meeting. I'm not talking about rare fish night if you're doing an auction there. I'm not talking about convention related type auctions. What I'm talking about is a club auction that's open to public. So obviously what that means is typically there's no entry fee. There may or may not be. Most typically is open to public for a reason, so you can go ahead and show up. But if you plan on selling at that club, even if you're not a paid member and it is open to public, you want to obviously, that goes back to your due diligence and common sense. Make sure that you actually read the rules, know who to get in contact with. Typically, there would be an email link on that specific website where you can get in contact either with the treasurer, the president of the club, that sort of thing, whoever is designated to that role, the auction chair, and so on, and get yourself a seller ID if you've never sold with them. Typically, most club, once you're in the system, unless you've taken a hiatus for 10 years or whatever, once you're logged in with a seller ID, there is no need to ever change it. Once you're in the system, typically, if a club is being effective, you're once in the system with that seller ID, that would be the same one that you use in the future, unless things change with that club. Again, I can't get too specific because there is some differences, obviously, between certain clubs and that sort of thing. And if you just want to show up and obviously just buy, that's going to be part of the check-in process. You would just go to essentially the bidder check-in area, which is typically where the treasurer is going to be. They would typically have a computer, maybe a printer set up, and that sort of stuff. Immediately when you walk in through the main entry doors, it should be kind of close to the entry doors in most. You can go and always obviously ask questions, ask the staff member. One of the board members typically may have like a staff shirt or like an Aquarium Club shirt, so you know who they are. And of course, don't feel ashamed if you have a question that may have not been addressed or maybe not quite understood when you're going through and reading through that information on that said club's website. Then you would just get yourself a bidder paddle, bidder number. You'll go ahead and set up. The other thing, obviously, is you want to ensure that you can accommodate whatever type of livestock you plan on introducing within your fish room or fish rooms. It can get overwhelming quite quickly, especially if you're quite new to the hobby and you've never been to an auction, or maybe you've only been to a handful of auctions and you're still kind of getting familiar with the process. You want to obviously, first and foremost, be able to care for whatever aquatic organisms you plan on introducing, whether if that's fish, invertebrates, whatever the case might be. Again, common sense. But I want to make note of that. Ensure that you have obviously a cooler, some type of appropriate transportation for any type of livestock you plan on obtaining. I also recommend, depending on the time of the year, if you have a cold and or heat packs on hand. Another one is like a digital thermometer, just a basic cheap aquarium thermometer with the lead wire that would go into an aquarium. Those work phenomenally well to place that lead, have the digital portion, the readout, obviously on the outside, tape it to the outside of the box or the cooler. That can give you a good idea, depending on the species you're working with and that sort of stuff, of where the temperature is at. Also, bring some extra tape, a Sharpie, a pen, a paper to take notes, potentially any scissors. And definitely you're going to want to bring, I would recommend, some extra fish bags and potentially even some dechlorinated water, and have that. You don't necessarily have to bring that in with you, but depending on your commute in your overall transport from that actual auction back to your place, you want to make sure you can appropriately accommodate. So you might even have to get like a battery power pump, again, depending on the size of the specimen. So those are some things to also keep in mind. Keep in mind as well, if you plan on paying with cash, credit, debit, that sort of stuff. Most clubs this day and age obviously is going to have some sort of card reader, chip reader, that type of thing, as well as maybe you want to do a split payment where you pay partial cash, credit and debit, or all cash, all credit and debit. Just keep in mind, if you're using credit and debit at some, they do have to eat those costs and they may have to unfortunately pass on. So again, these clubs, you guys have to keep in mind, they're a not-for-profit type organization. And depending on the circumstances and that sort of stuff, most clubs, I can tell you, typically are going to be around that 2.2 to 3% range, depending on what their fees are associated in whatever type of platform they're using for debit and credit cards and that sort of stuff. So keep that in mind in your overall total at the end. And don't be surprised on that. Again, this goes back to make sure you do due diligence when it comes to reading up on the rules and that sort of thing. They also have, raffles at many of these. So keep that in mind as well, to be on a lookout for. So something to kind of be excited about. A lot of them will have, obviously, with everything that's been going on the last couple of years, they may not have necessarily food preparation or food services available, but some of them have like a little food court type setup where you can go up to a window, let's say it's in a gymnasium or something like that. And you can go over to like the concession stand and purchase a snack or a drink. Again, that's something that you can also look into. Keep in mind as far as priority items. So when you're actually putting things through an auction, so priority item is usually associated with a very, very small fee that basically bumps that item up into the queue rather than having to wait all day long. But if you do run a item through priority, obviously you got to meet with the bag check-in over in that area of the auction setting. Get with a staff member, like I was mentioned earlier on, somebody there, and they can also assist you at these events if they have like a priority type item available. So essentially, you just they would bring that up to the front to the auctioneer. But if you do run an item through priority, it usually goes up very quickly. So you don't want to overlook it, where you end up running something through priority. And you're like, what the heck? I didn't even hear it. So you want to, I'm talking within a matter of a couple of minutes, typically. That's the whole basis for it. They also have the buy it now table. You want to, if you're buying or if you're selling, understand, again, going back to the rules. Typically there's a set number of dry goods and or livestock that you can actually put in the buy it now table. If it doesn't end up selling on the buy it now table, again, understand that club's rules. It could then get moved, or you can acquire it back. So if you end up leaving the auction and putting the stuff, it's going to end up getting moved to the auction portion of it. Once that time concludes, let's say around 2 p.m. in the afternoon, if it's an early start of an auction. These auctions run all day long. So from morning till night. They could be a 10-hour auction. It could be an 8-hour auction. I can tell you right now, our club runs one of the largest Aquarium Club auctions in the United States. It wouldn't be uncommon for our club to not even get out until 9 p.m. at night, and this starts in the morning. You want to get in there if this is your first time, obviously, at more of the onset, more of the start of the auction. It's always wise to get there so you can get familiar with the layout, get familiar with the process. Now, if you are selling, one of the do's that you want to do is ensure that you have obtained, again, going back to what I was saying, with forms, any pertinent information that you need to know. Obviously, you're going to need a seller registration form, as well as bag labels. Typically, most clubs will have like a PDF format. You can print those off. I recommend make it clean. Use some type of Adobe or some type of software. Most of us this day and age have free type of capability where you don't have to pay for a service to simply print off, enter in the information, make it clean rather than writing on the bags. I'll get to why here in a few minutes. So understand the layout. Most clubs, when you write information, it's going to have, again, usually a 3-letter initial, something like that. So let's say PLN-13. What that means is essentially the first 3 is the seller ID. So let's say you're the seller, and the 13 would be that bag number associated with that registration form. And speaking on the registration forms, when you obtain a registration form, typically, let's say like with our club, it's a max of 50, which is plenty above and beyond. So that means essentially with the big auctions, you can bring up to 50 items, a max of 5 per that item. So if you're bringing in some guppies, and let's say you have a pair or a trio or a group of guppies, You only can do a max of 5 bags of each of those guppies based on that specific variety. That way things don't get bogged down and overwhelmed. Again, 5 I find is pretty significant, but in up to a max of 50. And I'm not going to get into the buy now right now. But again, that's also keeping that in mind when you are selling. If you want to put items on the buy it now table where you could essentially move those or actually obtain those back if you don't want them to move to the auction. Talked about that here a couple of minutes ago. But you want to make sure it's clear. You want to make sure when you arrive, have all of this done ahead of time. I cannot put enough emphasis on that. So don't show up to an auction, and let alone if it's your first time, you're going to be even way more overwhelmed. Things get quite chaotic. These are all volunteer positions. So have some grace for those who are running and operating these type of events. They're very large events, especially if you have a very large turnout. Things can get quite overwhelming very quickly. So be patient with that. But to eliminate a lot of issues that may arise later on, especially for the treasurer, I can tell you from running that role for a few years, that's why I'm mentioning I know what happens behind the scenes, because I was that guy who processed the checks. I was that guy who basically did everything. That's what, when people show up, if they've never actually held those roles and positions, may not, unfortunately, realize some of the adverse, turnout with that. And so make sure if you are going to write on those bags or utilize those bag labels and you're going to handwrite, make sure it's legible. That is very, very important. Make sure that those line up and all those bag labels are associated appropriately based on that registration form. Don't push the boundaries with those, just don't show up and I literally have seen it all. I've seen where there was basically no information. Now you're trying to go through the system afterward. This is all the stuff that happens behind the scenes that nobody is aware of. And it just turns into a cluster of what. So don't do that. Make sure it's legible. If you plan on volunteering in the role and the position, if you want to assist, if you are a part of your own club, reach out and ask. Most of these clubs need volunteers. You could be a runner. That means that you're going up when the auctioneer is up there and you're grabbing the bag. And then once it's bid on, that's been complete. It's now sold to said individual. You bring the bag over to them, the item over to them. You have them sign the slip, just verifying the slip. And then you got to go turn it in by the treasurers or entering in the information to the auction software. One of the other ones is don't. If you are a recorder, so let's say you're volunteering into a position and you're recording, you want to make sure that that is very legible, that you can see the information as things are being auctioned off and as the slips are being getting ready for the actual bag slips for the slip that goes on. We classify them as runner slips. Once those are attached to the item or items, you want to make sure that all of the information that's legible on there. Again, if you're a volunteer in that position, you can't play guessing games. If you are going to be a runner, you want to make sure, again, that information is on there. That's one of your duties as well. Redundancy is key. Something might have been overlooked. It can be caught at this point. So as you're bringing the item over to said individual, the one who bid in on it, the one who won, you're going to have them just initial or sign their signature. You're going to sign next to the runner part. They're going to sign next to the buyer. You want to make sure the buyer number's on there, the bag number's on there, all the pertinent information that you need. Make sure that the amount is written on there legible for the sold amount. So that information, once it's brought to individuals running that portion of the auction, entering into the software system, that is accounted for appropriately. If you are planning to sell, another thing to keep in mind, I can't tell you how many times I've seen this happen, is especially if you're new, that's why I'm sharing this stuff, is if you plan on going to check out, let's say you're midway through and you're like, do I get a check today? Can we offset it by what I've sold so far? I do notice that some items may be up there. Maybe you sold everything that you brought in. Maybe you only brought in a handful of bags. No, that's not how it works. You will either get a check and or whatever method of distribution that they plan on paying out from said club. Is you want to keep that in mind. Don't get all upset over it. You will get paid. Give it a 2 or 3 days. I can tell you I was very quick. Typically within a 24-hour turnaround, by the next day, I was already had everything processed and it was already mailed out that Monday. So again, everybody works differently. But that is something to keep in mind. Understand that there is a split. So what I mean by that is typically a club, like with our club, very, very generous. They give the seller, you're the one bringing in items to sell. Same thing at what we classify as our club related events, where you do have to be a paid member. So at the end of each monthly meeting, you would essentially do an auction, that sort of thing. If you are a seller, keep in mind that there's that split. So let's say, using our club as an example, you get 70%, 30% goes back to the club. You could do a full donation. I'm not going to sit here and cover on the donations. Let's say you have a handful of items and you just want to put them into donation. Essentially, it would just be labeled as DON, as classified as donation. But again, each club may differentiate in how they mark. You can just reach out to somebody there if you plan on donating, and they can help you with that. But essentially, seller registration form and all of that is still pertinent. Still have to fill out that information to keep it clean, to keep everything fluent and going accordingly. Let's see. Looking at my notes again. If I start narrowing it down to very, very micro details, I would be here for like 6 to 8 hours. Why don't we turn our attention real quick? I'm going to take a drink, and I appreciate everybody joining. Again, if you're watching this in the replay, thank you. If you enjoy this sort of content and you want to continue seeing me show up here at Mondays at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, make sure you give it a like so I know that you guys are enjoying it. Feel free to share it out. And if you're not subscribed, I encourage you to do it, as I do plan on continuing to do these as long as people are enjoying them. I'll continue to provide some education here on the YouTube platform. All right. So again, you guys, any questions for me, put at Sergeant Tank. You can see right in the pinned comment what you need to do. Then that will highlight for me. I don't mind at all. I appreciate you guys just showing up. If you're chatting amongst the within the chat amongst the community here, feel free to go ahead and do it. But just so I know that that stands out to me, put at Sergeant Tank all together, as it shows in the pinned comment. If you're not aware, obviously, we do have been dealing since within the aquatic pet industry since 2007. You can check us out at sergeanttank.com for amazing live aquatic specimens, as well as Sergeant Tank related apparel and merchandise and all of that stuff. Let's see. We run about 8 to 9 hours. There is a kitchen. Yep. There is nothing I haven't seen or I haven't done. I was that guy. I got our club down to a point within just a couple of months time frame. This is a few years back when I took over that role and got pretty much running everything from my phone. But I'm not going to go into my background and what I used to do outside of fish keeping, all of that. But yeah. So again, noticing some differentiation between different clubs. You want to just, the standards of showing up and a lot of information is pretty universal. However, the specific rules and how sellers get paid and that sort of stuff, of course, is slightly going to be a little bit different, especially if you're not in the U.S. and you're overseas. It could be completely different. But I can tell you within the U.S., a lot of this stuff is pretty straightforward across the board. A lot of it, again, is just common sense. You want to make sure, obviously, again, just to reiterate, I can't put enough emphasis on that. I can't tell you how many times. I'm not going to go through all the stuff I've seen, and I can tell you it turns into a complete nightmare for specifically the treasurer. They're the ones that ultimately are running the show when it comes down to it afterwards. So be patient. Again, how that process really comes together. behind the scenes at the end of the day, once they go through and they're processing all of that paperwork, making sure they want to make sure you guys as a seller, if you're showing up, are getting paid appropriately, making any amendments to, the auction items when they get messed up, because some of those things I mentioned, if they're not legible, that should be checked at seller, that should be checked and avoided anyways at seller registration at that portion, and then essentially working in unison or conjunction with one another between bag check-in as well as seller registration, seller check-in. Understand the forms, understand those bag labels. Like I said, if you have the means to jump on your laptop, desktop, even on your phone, whatever the case might be, enter in that information, utilizing some of those programs like I mentioned, and you can get more familiar with that rather than having to handwrite. Our treasurer is a financial director of this company. Yes, that helps. Again, I'm not going to disclose what I used to do. I've talked about that before in the past. However, I can tell you very briefly, working for many years in a multi-billion-dollar related type, very, very large company. But yeah, all too familiar with that. Let's see. That's probably why it was pretty easy for me to get everything, like I said, within a month or two, pretty much on my phone. All right. Any questions though related to club events? I got through that pretty quick. I took a bunch of notes here and printed those off beforehand. Again, if you guys are watching this in the replay, or if you're watching it right now and you want to check out some of that stuff that I mentioned, feel free to check the description and some of the information I went ahead and provided for you guys. If I sit here and go on every specific detail, kind of a moot point, I guess, because again, there is differentiations between clubs. Natural Aquariums, hello. So again, at Sergeant Tank, if you guys are wanting to ask me a specific question. At this point in time, we've been going for about 27 minutes or so. Bring these up to right at an hour. And at this point, if there is no other questions related to the auction, you can just ask any general questions at this stage. So I want to say this is a fifth one that I have done consecutively. If you guys aren't aware, anybody new, I've been on the platform for quite some time. And I've already put out a lot of information on this stuff. Just search our YouTube videos here at Sergeant Tank on the YouTube channel. And if you go to the main channel and search within that, just put in auctions, clubs, whatever the case might be. I've already covered this stuff. I've actually shown screen shares of forms, how it's ran, obtaining items, acclimatizing, a number of different stuff. Tons and tons of videos there for you guys if you want to check it out. Let's see. Do you limit on used dry goods? We do not allow used gravel or used. Yes, we do. We're actually changing that since I'm no longer part of the board per se. I don't know the exact specifics, but yes, that is one. And I agree with you. Anybody that has been in this and around clubs for, handful of years plus, all knows all too well, especially if they've held some roles within the club, how they can get a bit out of hand. So yes, we do. Yes, we do. Again, you'll want to check each club. Again, I just cannot put enough emphasis on this. I can't tell you how many times folks have even shown up, even people who have been to the club, and they still show up. And I'm not picking on anybody in particular. It's a number of different times in not having those forms printed out, not having that information on hand, that sort of stuff. So Basic explanation of how to set up an aquarium club, step by step, simple general explanations. Yeah, that's a great topic, and one I mentioned last week. I may be able to cover in a future um, live stream. That would probably be more appropriate for an actual edited video, um, because that would take some time for me to put that together. And again, there's a lot that goes into it, a lot. I wouldn't be able to do that right now, but it is something that I'm keeping in the back of my mind for future. I can't really give like a general explanation. I can tell you right now, there are some folks through the community that have assisted in the past, and I know to this day actually have clubs now going. Um, so, but again, yeah, there's a lot of legalities and tax related stuff and that sort of thing. I'm not going to get into here today. We have a limit on how many items you can bring. Let's see here. We have a limit on how many items you can bring. Any items not sold needs to be taken home by the person. Yes, that is correct. And also going off from that is let's say you bring in an item, and again, you would have to read the specific rules for that club. But hypothetically, let's say you bring in an item and it does not sell. Sometimes there's a minimum buyback or a fee associated with that if it doesn't sell. I'm not saying that goes with all clubs, but that may be something you want to keep in mind too. So if you're bringing in especially some used aquariums, used equipment, maybe it's certain livestock that's just very saturated and nobody's going to have any interest in. Again, that's kind of a whole segue into a different topic. However, again, I've discussed a lot of this stuff in much greater detail, kind of breaking it down in more micro detail in the past, such as today is more focused on preparation, some of the general things to keep in mind, the do's and don'ts, that sort of stuff. Now, when you're trying to kind of leverage, again, when it comes to selling and or buying, I can tell you, I would classify myself, I guess, now. It was quite comical. Anybody that is in or around our area, there's a couple of us that would have these just auction wars where you kind of go in the straight poker face. And again, there of course there is some. It's not like you can. I don't want to use the word cheat the system. But when you go to auctions, there is some strategy, of course, that goes into it. Same thing if you're planning to sell, make sure what you're actually putting in there. You realize, again, keep that in mind when you're auctioning, whether if it's livestock, if it's equipment, understand the whole fair market value goes completely out the window. What you think based on retail prices, or you think based on your own research, whether if you're looking at different places and kind of comparing prices of what that would go for, it could go for more, it could go for much less. You have to understand with any auction there is that sort of risk. So don't, if something is really sentimental towards you, maybe the auction isn't the appropriate place to put it in. Maybe you want to find a different means to relocate or sell, that sort of thing. We also have a separate table for different grouping. Absolutely. Yep. So what they're classifying there. So when you go into the club, you would have a section for cichlids, for live bears, for killifish, for rainbow fish, for other oddball, and the list goes on. Again, that would be certain table sections. So again, I appreciate your club, or I think you said your club. Ours is the exact same way. Very straightforward. As soon as you go in, go towards the back of that section, tons of tables set up. And again, I love when things are grouped within families of fish. Makes it easier for just everybody. Let's see. Pushes or minimum bids. Typically, I mean, again, that would kind of go into another segue of a different topic. But when it comes to like the actual auctioneers, of course, you have to be good at what you do, be fluent, be quick, don't miss anybody because you can upset people. But be very diligent and know obviously species and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, not necessarily no. No, I mean the only one, as I was mentioning earlier on, is the priority item, which essentially I would call kind of a push. So I want an item on the table. I'm not going to wait there all day. I want to get the heck out. I have a long commute. I'm going to put that through the auction. Again, be diligent and know as soon as that item goes into priority. Understand, and I've already discussed this, but just keep your keep alert when it goes up there, because I can tell you when in just a handful of minutes, usually a minute or two, it's going to end up going through, and you don't want to overlook that because it completely defeats the purpose. So now you're paying again. Most of them are if they have a fee associated with it, it's a very, very small fee, like $1 or $2. And then now all of a sudden you don't even have a chance to bid on it because it's come and gone. Somebody else has it. So, yeah. We allow minimum bids, reserve, but it rarely comes up. Yeah, we do not do that. Now, if we got into like proxy bidding or something like that, that's a little bit different, quite a bit different. But yeah, we allow pushes after priority bags have been auctioned. Charge $2 a push, no minimum bids. You'll be there all day. And yes, so just to clarify, what they're mentioning here is essentially, yes, there is two different differentiations between priority. So I want to clarify. So a priority, what I mean by priority push is what I've just discussed. A priority item. So let's say you go in and you're bringing in 25 different items. Could be livestock, could be dry goods. Again, you'll have to go back and watch this later if you want to get more details, what I mentioned. Let's say it's a red label. Essentially, you're going to, depending on how many items in what that given club is, they're going to have a chart. So when you're going through the seller registration process, you're checking in, you're going to get little color coded dots or some type of color coding program. Essentially, the red is typically going to be a priority. Those are going to be the first items that will go through the auction. If you have yellow, white, blue, whatever the case, again, those would be subsequent items, the next grouping that goes up into the auction. So something to also keep in mind. And again, that would be more explained once he actually showed up and in checking in those bags. Let's see. All right. About 20 more minutes, you guys. And we're going to go ahead and wrap this up again at Sergeant Tank if you have a question specifically for me. How are you guys liking the 1 p.m. Eastern time? How you guys liking these afternoon? It kind of covers a very wide range depending on where you're at around the world. But yeah. We do have about a 20 or so second delay, so just have to bear with us here. So yeah, I mentioned that earlier on as well. Just to reiterate, yes, we do both with our club. We do both cash and cards. So you can do a split where you pay partial cash, part debit or credit card, however you want to do it. Yes. You do have to keep in mind, again, those associated fees, which is usually pretty small. But if you're buying several $100s worth of stuff, of course, that can add up. But keep that in mind if you plan on paying with a card. Maybe more wise for you if they accept cash, you go ahead and bring in cash or pay a majority of it with cash. Again, going back at the beginning, make sure that you're not getting overwhelmed and you can actually accommodate what it is that you plan on wanting to go for. Again, using good common sense and good judgment. Bring yourself a pad of paper, pen, pencil, Sharpie, whatever the case might be. Take notes when you're going through. Get there earlier on. And again, you may want to put some items through priority. You may want to push those up there faster. Maybe you don't care and you want to see how it goes all day long. But again, if you're not aware if they have priority or not, where you can actually push an item up quicker by a small fee potentially, you're going to want to check that out. Again, go to that club's website, wherever they have the information, and if they are an actual legitimate aquarium club, bare minimum they should have those forms and all of that information for folks to view. As far as trading, if you mean no. And another thing I want to kind of mention as well when it comes to trading, don't be that individual where you show up to an aquarium club event and you're selling to somebody outside in the parking lot or even potentially inside. It's just not good character. It's not good etiquette. The same thing goes for if you're selling items as a hobbyist outside of a club event and you show up in front of your local fish store. Again, proper etiquette, don't do that. It's just not wise. To each their own. I mean, you do whatever you want at the end of the day, but to me, it's just common sense. Don't do that stuff. Unless it's been discussed and that sort of stuff. Depending on, again, I get sometimes there's certain circumstances that may arise, but out of respect and out of professionalism, you may want to reach out to, the club board and address whatever, if it kind of ties into what I just mentioned there. But again, don't do that kind of stuff. A few people give me items at the club, always feels a bit weird accepting them. Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that stuff out, and if be a little smart about it, whoever it is, I'm not saying you per se, but whoever it is, I mean, just use some common sense there. If you are going to do it, do it at maybe a more appropriate time. So again, you got to keep in mind, these are non-for-profit type organizations. The means is they're trying to get everybody together. Ultimately, they go hand in hand. Not only are they supporting your local fish stores, but also vice versa. And again, clubs that have been around for many years, this is something they want to continue and enjoy putting on to make sure it is a fun turnout for everybody involved, that there isn't too much chaos and a lot of unnecessary stuff going on kind of off to the side, for lack of better terms. Again, proper etiquette, good common sense, using good judgment, make sure the morale stays up there. And you don't want to be that individual. And we've seen that before where, afterward there's things going around where this person's saying, hey, said individuals coming in, they're selling stuff, so yeah. I've always seen people bringing coolers at swaps here. Just curious about what auctions. Yep, mentioned that earlier on as well. You want to have appropriate cooler, extra fish bags in case they leak. You may want to have some dechlorinated water, potentially even RO water, depending on the species that you're picking up and how they need to be acclimatized. But you may have to do that stuff depending on your commute back to your place of residence. If you have a longer commute or even a short commute and you need to just quickly get that fish into some fresh water, potentially, you can obviously ask a staff member there if something is up, and I could go into an entire rant. I've talked about this before when it comes to actually just properly tying bags. I've had people even come over that have been around in the hobby for a long time. Obviously, to us, it's second nature. I've been dealing with shipping livestock for years. So to me, it's nothing. I can do it in my sleep. When I prepare and get things ready for an auction, or if I'm bringing it back, depending on the location of the auction, if I'm going to be a part of that and also buying, same thing goes in. Obviously, it comes down to experience. Have heat and or cold packs available if you need to. You may have to have like a battery-powered air pump or USB air pump, or if you have an inverter in your vehicle, that sort of thing. You put in an air pump. Not always necessary. You may have a bucket. Keep that in mind. Again, it kind of depends on your ambition, but that goes back in what I was saying earlier on. Make sure that you can actually accommodate for what it is that you plan on bringing back. You know, just because it's a good deal doesn't mean that it's good for that specific specimen. You really need, and that's where we need to kind of, you know, use good judgment. It may seem like, man, nobody's bidding on this, but I know deep down I cannot accommodate it right now. It's probably appropriate, obviously, that you don't bid on it. If you can't accommodate it, don't bid on it. If you don't know what it is that you're getting into, don't bid on it. Yeah. Another thing I wanted to tie into that I was mentioning earlier on is like a thermometer. So just a basic digital thermometer with the lead wire that goes in. They would use like an aquarium. You can attach it on the outside. They'll kind of give you an understanding, obviously, that digital readout of where things are at, happening temperature wise. Obviously, if it's an indoor event, you know, it's going to be essentially at room temperature. But again, you may want to keep that in the back of your mind to bring some of those extra things. It's better to be safe, be more proactive rather than reactive, is my entire conclusion, I guess, on that whole spiel. Be proactive rather than reactive. Let's see. I try to be discreet and go through it in the car, but I always feel like I'm doing something wrong and accepting it. A free item, I just tell them, put it in the donate pile next time. Let's see here. And I'm, you know, again, I want to reiterate, I'm not going to go through all of that again, but, you know, use good judgment, to each their own. I'm just telling you what my personal thoughts are on it. I'm not saying that they're right or wrong, but yeah. Double bagging, yeah, first bag inverted into the second. Yeah. And again, you guys have gone through great detail on proper bagging. It's really surprising how many people think that they know how to bag and they just don't know how to bag. But yeah. Let's see. Bare minimum, if you're in the fish keeping, you have a few tanks, start learning how to bag. Just practice at home with nothing in it. But yeah, Mike can contest to that. I'm picking on him here. What's going on, buddy? Hope you are doing well, my friend. So yeah, I mean, if you're using 2 mil, 3 mil, 4 mil, depending on if you're double, triple, quadruple bagging, obviously there's don't buy 4 mil bag. Hey, how fast did I do that 4 mil bag though? He was like shocked. He was shocked. I mean, again, you got to keep in mind, you guys, this is second nature to me. I can do it literally in my sleep. It's nothing. I have shipped thousands. I have done hundreds of thousands of bags over the years when it comes to bagging. So obviously, the more fluent you get with it, the more practice you have, like with anything else, it's going to come second nature. Common sense. What does this speak of? Yeah, I've said years ago, even back in my teens, I'm going to write a whole book in common sense. I wanted to quit fish keeping after you did that bag. Yeah. Oh, and then the icing on that was when I flipped that bag up just to make a point. There was water in it, no fish, but I flipped the bag up and let it land on the ground just to make a point that it wasn't going to bust open. Yeah, that was kind of like the mic drop moment. Corridor cell poisoning. Yeah, I talked about the releasing. You got to keep that in mind, you guys, when it comes to many of your catfish within different families of catfish, whether if that's Ancestris or Coriodoras, that sort of stuff, is the toxin being released. You can go back and watch that, I want to say a couple of streams ago. But I've also covered this in great detail. Just search up on the YouTube channel. You can just search our homepage and put in whatever you're searching for, and chances are I probably have already covered it in great detail. Let's see. I learned that one the hard way. Yep. Don't beat yourself up, you guys. You know, this is something where if you're new to the hobby and you haven't experienced that, it's something that can be overlooked. You know, nobody is necessarily perfect, but that kind of where it goes back into understanding what it is that you're getting into. If you plan on wanting to go there and obtain some corridors, or if you want to obtain a specific specimen, again, make sure first and foremost, you know what it is that you're getting into, knowing how to properly accommodate it appropriately, knowing how to properly transport it. And you still may do all that stuff and something might happen, unfortunately. That's just life. Let's see, about 10 more minutes, you guys. Again, at Sergeant Tank. Love the dialogue here. Keep the dialogue going. Helps keep the live stream moving about. So we'll just have a bunch of unnecessary silence. There was about a 20 or so second delay, so you just have to bear with me. Just scrolling back up, I don't see anything else. I asked a question earlier if 1 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on Monday seemed to be okay. The consensus there is it seems like folks like the 1 p.m. People will bring a 5-inch. Yeah, don't even get me going on that. Oh, yeah. People bring a 5-inch discus in a baggie. Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the worst. What is the worst one I've seen? I don't know. Seen quite a few bad ones. 1 p.m. is good. Awesome. Yeah, it looks like I'm caught up here. I'm curious how all of the auctions will go since most clubs haven't had one in 2 years. It's possible. We got King Lee in the house. How you doing, my friend? Ziploc bags. Yeah. Don't use Ziploc bags. In most clubs too, you guys will sell bags, fish bags there. But yeah. And obviously, if there is an issue or somebody that put something through, and again, I've had fish on the brink of death, and I literally on the fly in the midst of doing a billion other things, running those, having the quick on the fly, very quick. I typically will bring. Most people don't do this, but just to have it on hand, I have things if I need to react to very quickly. I can tell you most probably don't go to that point, but sometimes I got to go into fish doctor mode and quick revive something or get something switched over because some knucklehead put it in a lunch sack. But yeah. Oh, we had two 24-inch koi brought in a couple years ago in a plastic cooler. Nobody wanted them. Wow. But yeah, I mean, that's a good question, Mike. Yeah, I mean, nobody knows. Yeah, nobody really knows. I don't foresee my beliefs in it. I don't foresee, like, typically with us, we're going to run on average 1,200 plus bags at our big annual auctions, so our spring and fall auctions, which is a lot. It's a lot. Like I said, we do run the largest here in the United States. And it probably won't be too far-fetched to say we do run the largest. So, but yeah, with that being said, I don't foresee it being much more than that. I just don't. There's still a lot of folks, obviously, depending on trend, because we get people coming all around. We get people flying in from California, a number of different places. But with everything going on the way it has been, it's hard to say. I mean, I hear things a lot where people are ambitious. They want newer folks coming into the hobby. But again, that's just all hearsay. You know, words are just words. I'm all about action. So we'll actually see if people are going to show up, and we do get a decent turnout. But yeah, our club went to online auctions. Auction ends Wednesday. Sellers drop off on Saturday. It's nice that you guys are accommodating for that, Kingley. We did 1,200 last time as well. I know Bucks County is, yep, Bucks one is. Yes, there is concession stands. I mentioned that earlier on. If you're referring to like a little eatery or a food, that may not be happening though. Like I said, you guys, I'm just telling you what I've known from being a part of a lot of these in the past. I'm no longer currently on the board, just because I stepped down from that role. I had lot of stuff going on in my life that I need to focus on, and I paid my dues. But yeah, so now what they plan on doing with everything going on, that's amongst the board. Obviously, make sure that they coincide with regulations set in place depending on your specific county, state, blah, blah, blah. Usually start to solicit in February for May auction. I am curious to see what the wholesalers, manufacturers, pet shop seller will donate. Yeah, we always we have a great rapport and relationship with our local. They're all sponsors. Sergeant Tank, we're a sponsor of the club as well, and been sponsors of other clubs, and we enjoy doing that. So yeah, I mean, be interesting to see what type of stuff they get. I'm making you repeat everything. That's all right. Let's see. I talk a bit fast. I'm actually slowing it way down. So yeah, I can talk like very, very quick on the fly. I'm not scripted. That's it as far as notes. I don't go off a script. Anybody that knows me well enough, I am one time kind of just get it out. It just is all up in here. I don't know. That's just the way it's been. Probably goes to my background, doing a lot of training for folks, being essentially in multiple different roles there. But yeah, I know for ours, the Lions Club is doing our food for the auction November. So yeah, we will be a part of. I do anticipate being a part for just a period of time. Obviously, I'm going to help and what way we can to ensure things get started off, because this is new to them. It's not new to me. For said individuals entering into kind of that auction setting for the first time. So of course I'll plan on being there and helping try to facilitate, make sure things are going off without any issues. Yeah, probably won't be there all day though. I do not plan on. I say that now. I don't even plan on probably getting anything. Of course, I'll be bringing stuff in, but I don't plan on this time actually bidding on anything. Let's see. A couple more minutes, you guys. Club meeting on Saturday. Food was all wrapped individually. Yep, that's also a great idea. Again, I don't know what the specifics are with our club per se, because of the fact not that decision maker. Got to run to a meeting. Bummed that I am missing GVAC's auction. Will be in Florida. Yeah, Mike. I mean, definitely enjoy yourself. And I wish I could make it. But yeah, it should be a good time for you guys. Come on, it's Florida. Beautiful. Hopefully you guys have some phenomenal weather as well, and you can get out and do some other stuff besides just the auction. Let's see. One more minute, you guys. So if there's one more question, I'll try to address it before I go ahead and wrap this up. And that will bring us at top of the hour. And again, I appreciate you guys hanging out. Check us out over at sergeanttank.com. More information about us. All of any information you need can be found as far as livestock, Sergeant Tank, merchandise, blogs, etc. feel free to just go ahead and play around on the website at sergeanttank.com if you want to. If you guys are watching this as well, you can check out some of the notes I put there for you guys down in the description as far as any links, other stuff. I didn't have time to go through and search. Like I said, the easiest thing, rather than me adding those links, if you guys want to know more about clubs, more about auctions, more about swap meets, more about fish keeping, breeding, whatever the case might be, fish rooms, business, I guarantee you, if you just search the channel, if there's a video there that I hadn't taken down, it's still there for you guys. You're just going to have to search it. Let's see. Hope you and the family are doing well. We are pressing in, my friend. Yes. Went through some nasal sinus surgery at the end of July, so that's been held me back quite a bit. It comes and goes. It takes several months, up to a year. So I'm looking forward to knowing what the outcome potential is. But yes, I hope that you guys are doing well. And business is going well for you guys. All right, you guys, that brings us up to an hour. Appreciate you guys hanging out. Hopefully we can get to, keep these going. If we can continue to push those numbers up as far as viewership, then I'll continue to do these. These take again, you guys, I just like every one of you guys, I value your time. Of course, I value my time, not only from a personal, but also a business standpoint. And again, coming up with topics, I'll continue to bring up topics, or we'll just have general Q&A for an hour. So keep a lookout for that. Make sure that you guys are paying attention to the community tab here on Sergeant Tank on the YouTube channel, and I'll be sharing those out. So if I schedule an event ahead of time or an impromptu live stream, that's where you're going to get it. I typically don't share them out anymore on other social media platforms, but just pay attention to the community. The only way that you're going to know what's going on there is make sure you subscribe, hit that notification with the post notifications. And of course, if you enjoy this type of content, we definitely appreciate it. It helps us here on YouTube if you want to like and share as well. So with that being said, make it a great rest of your week. And we'll see you guys back here hopefully next week, Monday, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.